4 years she knew only silence, then a stranger with a baby appeared at her door, begging for shelter. Snow blanketed the wide Wyoming plains, soft as cotton, cold as sorrow. In the middle of it all stood a small cabin, its chimney puffing thin smoke into the winter sky. Inside, Eleanor Hart, now 52, sat by the hearth, sewing by the dim light of a kerosene lamp. She had grown used to the quiet. Too used to it, maybe. The kind of silence that wraps itself around a person until they forget how to speak. It had been 10 years since she'd last heard another voice inside her home. 10 long winters since her husband, Samuel, rode out in a blizzard and never returned. Eleanor had waited weeks before accepting he was gone. Then months before she stopped setting an extra plate at dinner. The neighbors drifted away, the roads washed out, and life became a circle of firewood, tea, and tears. Now, her days were marked only by the rising and falling of the fire. Until that night. The wind howled like a living thing, rattling the windows, shaking loose the shutters. She had just settled under a quilt when a sound pierced through the storm, a knock. Her needle froze midair. For a moment, she thought she'd imagined it. But then it came again, urgent, uneven, desperate. Eleanor's heart pounded. She stood slowly, took the lantern, and moved to the door. "Who's there?" she called, her voice rough from disuse. Through the storm came a faint reply, trembling and male. "Please. I need help. My baby, she's freezing." Eleanor hesitated only a second before unbolting the door. The wind burst in, carrying snow and a man with it, a young man, barely 30, his coat torn, his face pale, and in his arms, a baby wrapped in a thin blanket. He stumbled forward, almost collapsing. Eleanor grabbed his arm and steadied him. "Close the door," he gasped. "Please." She kicked it shut behind them, her old hands surprisingly strong. The baby whimpered softly, a weak, pitiful sound that cut through her heart. "Put her near the fire," she ordered, pointing to the hearth. "Now." The man obeyed without question. He knelt on the rug, clutching the baby close as Eleanor threw more wood onto the flames. "She's freezing," he said hoarsely. I didn't think the storm would be this bad." The car, stuck halfway down the trail. Eleanor crouched beside him, her trembling fingers brushing the child's cheek. "She's ice cold. What were you thinking, traveling with a baby this far out?" "I didn't have a choice," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm trying to get to my sister's. My wife, she passed last spring. I couldn't stay in that house anymore." Eleanor's heart ached at the rawness in his tone. Grief recognized grief. "Take off that coat," she said. "You're soaked through. There's stew on the stove. Eat before you fall over." He looked like he wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. As he ate, Eleanor held the baby, wrapping her in one of Samuel's old wool blankets. The warmth slowly returned to the little one's cheeks, and her tiny hand reached out, curling around Eleanor's finger. That single touch nearly undid her. It had been so long since anyone had touched her, not since Samuel's hand went cold in hers. And here was this fragile life, clinging to her with trust. "What's her name?" she whispered. "Rose," he said softly. "After her mother." "Pretty name," Eleanor murmured, rocking the baby gently. "And yours?" "Daniel. Daniel Cooper." "Well, Daniel Cooper," she said, "you nearly froze that poor child to death. You'll stay here until the storm breaks. No arguments." He nodded, his eyes full of gratitude and shame. "Thank you, ma'am. I didn't think anyone lived out here anymore." "Most don't," she replied quietly. "But some of us still hold on." By the time the wind calmed, Daniel was asleep on the old couch, a blanket over his shoulders. Rose lay in a basket beside the fire, her tiny breaths soft and steady. Eleanor sat watching them both. The silence she had once cherished now felt different, softer, warmer. The crackle of fire mixed with Rose's gentle sighs, and it filled the hollow places in her heart she'd long stopped noticing. She whispered to the child, "You have your mama's eyes, don't you?" The baby stirred, and Eleanor smiled through tears she hadn't expected. "You're safe now, little one." That night, Eleanor slept for the first time in years without waking from dreams of loss. Morning came clear and cold, sunlight glinting off the snow like 1,000 diamonds. Daniel was already awake, holding Rose and staring out the frosted window. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "Hard to believe how cruel it looked last night." Eleanor poured him coffee. "Winter's like that. Looks peaceful, till it isn't." He smiled faintly. "You talk like you've known her a while." "I've known her my whole life," she said. "Born here, married here, buried my husband here." His smile faded. "I'm sorry." She shrugged. "It's all right. You learn to live with ghosts after a while." He nodded, rocking the baby gently. Rose's mama used to say the same thing. That love doesn't leave, it just changes form. Eleanor met his gaze, and for the first time in a decade, she didn't look away. She was a wise woman. The storm passed, but Daniel didn't leave right away. His car was buried deep in snow, and Eleanor insisted he stay until the roads cleared. In those days that followed, something unexpected began to bloom. Daniel chopped firewood, repaired her broken fence, and fixed the leaky roof that had dripped all winter. In return, Eleanor cooked meals that filled the house with smells she'd forgotten: stew, bread, apple pie. At night, they sat by the fire while Rose played on a blanket. Sometimes Daniel talked about his late wife, Claire, how she'd loved to paint, how she'd laughed loud enough to fill a room. Eleanor listened quietly, the ache of recognition deep in her bones. "You must miss her terribly," she said one night. He nodded. "Every day. But being here, it's strange. I feel like she'd want me to stay alive." For Rose. Eleanor looked down at the baby, sleeping with her thumb in her mouth. "Then stay alive," she said softly. "That's what she'd want. That's what they all would." He looked at her then, eyes tired but warm. "You talk like someone who knows." "I do," she whispered. As weeks turned into a month, the snow began to melt. Daniel fixed the car, tested the engine, and came to her that evening with a heavy heart. "The roads will open tomorrow," he said. "We can make it to my sister's by nightfall." Eleanor forced a smile. "That's good news." But her voice trembled, and he noticed. "You've been good to us," he said gently. "More than I could ever repay." She waved him off. "I just did what anyone would." "Not anyone," he said. "No one else opened their door that night." There was silence between them, thick and sad. Rose babbled softly, crawling toward Eleanor. The older woman lifted her, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "You'll grow up kind, little one." "I know it." Daniel swallowed hard. "She loves you, you know. You're the first person she's laughed with since Claire." Eleanor's eyes shimmered. "Then she's given me something too." The next morning, the car was packed. The baby was bundled in a pink coat, her cheeks rosy. Daniel turned to Eleanor, his breath fogging in the cold air. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "If you ever need anything." Eleanor smiled. "I needed a reason to open my door again. You gave me that." He looked at her a long moment, then said quietly, "You don't have to stay out here alone, you know. My sister's place, there's room. Rose would love having you around." Her heart jumped. "You're offering an old widow a place in your family?" "I'm offering you a home," he said simply. She blinked back tears. "Let me think about it." He nodded. "We'll write. I promise." As the car rolled away, Eleanor stood on the porch, the baby waving a tiny hand from the window. The road stretched long and white, the wind soft this time, almost kind. When they vanished from sight, she turned back toward the cabin. It was quiet again, but not empty. The silence she once feared now carried an echo of laughter, the warmth of a child's touch, and the promise that she wasn't forgotten. That night, she lit a second lamp by the window, a signal in case someone else ever lost their way. Because Eleanor had learned something powerful that winter. Even in the loneliest places, a single knock can bring life back to the heart.